The bank envelope burned in my hands like it was on fire. 40 years of working double shifts, clipping coupons, and eating ramen noodles, all of it sitting right there in that manila folder. I should have listened to the voice in my head screaming, "Don't do this." But mothers don't listen to common sense when it comes to their children. "David, honey, I have something for you," I called out as I rang the doorbell of his perfect suburban house. The kind of house I'd dreamed of my whole life but never could afford. The door swung open, and there he was, my baby boy, all grown up at 35. Still had that same smile that used to melt my heart when he was 5 and caught stealing cookies. "Mom, what are you doing here?" He glanced over my shoulder like he was checking if the neighbors were watching. Can't a mother visit her son? I forced a laugh. "I have something special for you." He stepped aside, barely. I walked into his marble foyer marble, for God's sake, and felt my old shoes squeaking against the polished floor. "So, what's this about?" David crossed his arms. No hug. No. "How are you feeling, Mom?" "Just business." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The moment I'd been planning for weeks. "I want to help you with the house payments," I said, holding out the envelope. "I know you and Sarah have been struggling with the mortgage." His eyes locked onto that envelope like a hawk spotting prey. "Mom, you don't have to." "I want to." I pressed it into his hands. "It's everything I have, my life savings, $47,000. The silence stretched between us like a funeral shroud. David's fingers traced the envelope's edges, slowly, carefully, like he was memorizing every detail. Are you sure about this?" "Of course I'm sure. You're my son. My only child." I reached up to touch his cheek. "What else would I do with it? I'm 72 years old. I don't need fancy things." He opened the envelope. Just a peek. But I saw his eyes change. They lit up, not with gratitude, not with love, with hunger. "Mom, this island." He swallowed hard. "This is incredible." Something cold crawled up my spine. The way he said incredible like he'd just won the lottery instead of accepting help from his struggling mother. "You'll keep it safe, right? In case I ever need." Of course, of course." But he was already walking toward his home office. Envelope clutched tight. "I'll deposit this first thing tomorrow. Get it working for us, you know? Investments. Us." He said, "Us." "David, wait." My voice cracked. "Can we talk for a minute? Maybe have some coffee?" He paused at his office door. "Actually, Mom, Sarah and I have dinner plans tonight. Rain check?" Dinner plans. It was 2 in the afternoon. "Oh, of course." I gathered my purse, suddenly feeling ancient. I should get going anyway. "Thanks for this, Mom. Really. This changes everything for us." Changes everything. Not helps us. Changes everything. I walked to my old Honda in his perfect driveway, my legs feeling like they might give out. Through his living room window, I could see David on his phone, pacing back and forth, the envelope open on his desk. He was smiling. That night, I lay in my tiny apartment bed, staring at my empty dresser drawer where that envelope used to live. For the first time in 40 years, I had no safety net, no emergency fund, no backup plan. But I had done something good for my son. Right? Right? The doubt started small. Just a whisper in my head as I tried to fall asleep. David's eyes when he saw that money. The way he rushed me out. How he'd said changes everything, like he'd been waiting for this moment. 3 weeks later, I tried calling him, straight to voicemail. 2 months later, I drove by his house. New car in the driveway. BMW. And 3 months later, when I sat in Dr. Peterson's office and heard the word that changes everything cancer, I finally understood what that cold feeling in my spine had been trying to tell me. I'd just handed my life savings to a stranger. A stranger who happened to share my DNA. The treatment would cost $60,000. And my son had 47,000 of mine. Time to make a phone call. The bills came like a flood. Every day, another envelope marked urgent in angry red letters. Every day, another number that made my blood pressure spike. Chemotherapy, $12,000. Radiation, $8,500. Surgery consultation, $3,200. I spread them across my kitchen table like a losing poker hand. My reading glasses kept sliding down my nose as I added up the totals. $63,000. More money than I'd ever seen in my life. More money than I had. But David had 47,000 of mine. My nest egg, my safety net. The phone felt heavy in my shaking hands. Come on, Margaret, I whispered to myself. He's your son. He'll understand. I dialed his number. The same number I'd been calling for 35 years. Ring. Ring. Hello? David's voice sounded different, distracted. David, honey, it's Mom. Oh, hi, Mom. What's up? I'm kind of busy right now. Busy. I was dying, and he was busy. I need to talk to you about something important. My voice cracked. I got the bills from the doctor. The treatment is going to cost. Mom, can we do this later? Sarah and I are looking at vacation houses online. Vacation houses. While his mother couldn't afford to save her own life. David, please. This is serious. The cancer treatment costs $60,000, and I don't have... Wait, what? Cancer? For a second, I heard my little boy again. Concerned. Scared. Yes, sweetheart. I have cancer. Stage 2. But it's treatable if I can afford the... Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? I tried calling you for weeks. You never answer. Silence. Well, I'm sure insurance will cover most of it, he said finally. Insurance covers 30%. I need the rest. I took a deep breath. I need some of the money back. The money I gave you. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. David? Are you there? Yeah, I'm here. His voice had changed again. Cold. Careful. Mom, what exactly are you asking? I'm asking for help. From my son. I need maybe 20,000 to cover the treatments, just until I figure something else out. 20,000. Yes, from the money you gave me. Something in his tone made my stomach clench. Yes, from my life savings that I gave you. Mom, we need to be clear about something here. We. Like I was some stranger negotiating a business deal. What do you mean? That money was a gift. The words hit me like a slap. A gift? Yes, a gift. You said so yourself. You said you wanted to help us with the house. David, I'm dying. That's not my fault. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. What did you just say? I said that's not my fault. You gave me that money freely. No conditions, no strings attached. No strings attached? My voice rose. I'm your mother, and I'm grateful for the gift you gave me. But gifts don't come with receipts, Mom. I couldn't breathe. The kitchen spun around me like a carnival ride. You think I gave you my life savings as a gift? With no expectation that you'd help me if I needed it? That's exactly what you did. David, I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. I worked 2 jobs so you could go to college. And now you're trying to guilt me into giving you money. Guilt him. He thought I was trying to guilt him. It's my money, David. My $47,000. Was your money. Past tense. It's invested now. In the house. In our future. I can't just liquidate everything because you have medical bills. Medical bills. Like I'd chosen to get cancer for fun. So that's it. Your mother is dying and you won't help? I didn't say I won't help. I said I can't access that specific money right now. Maybe we can work something out. A loan or something. A loan? He wanted to loan me my own money back. What kind of interest rate are you thinking? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Mom, don't be like that. Don't be like what? Don't be like a mother who trusted her son. Don't be like a woman who's going to die because she was stupid enough to believe her child loved her. Of course I love you. No, you don't. The words came out calm and certain. If you loved me, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Mom, if you loved me, you would have said, "Don't worry. We'll figure this out together." You would have said, "Let me help you." Mom, you would have acted like a son instead of a stranger. I am your son. Number. My voice was steady now. Clear. My son died the day he decided his dying mother wasn't worth helping. You're just someone who looks like him. You're being dramatic. Dramatic. I was dying, and he thought I was being dramatic. David, let me ask you something. When you go to sleep tonight in your marble-floored house, and you think about your mother lying awake wondering how she's going to pay for the treatment that might save her life, how does that feel? Silence. Does it feel good, knowing you have the power to help and you're choosing not to? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. I heard Sarah's voice in the background. Who are you talking to? My mom, David said, hand partially covering the phone. Tell her we're busy, Sarah said. Tell her we're busy. Like I was some telemarketer interrupting their evening. David. Yeah? I want you to remember this phone call. Years from now, when I'm gone and you're trying to convince yourself that you were a good son, I want you to remember exactly what you said to me tonight. Mom, don't. I want you to remember that when your mother was dying, you chose money over her life. That's not what I'm doing. That's exactly what you're doing. I stood up, my legs shaky but my resolve strong. And I want you to know something else. What? I'm not giving up. I'm going to find another way to pay for this treatment, and I'm going to live. Not because you helped me, but in spite of the fact that you didn't. Mom. And when I beat this cancer, David, I never want to see you again. I hung up before he could respond. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. The bills were still scattered across the table. The numbers hadn't changed. But something inside me had. For 72 years, I'd been Margaret the mother, Margaret the caregiver, Margaret the woman who put everyone else first. Now I was just Margaret, and Margaret was going to fight. Time to make some very different phone calls. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who hires a private investigator. But then again, I never thought I'd be the kind of person whose son would let her die for money. Desperation makes you do crazy things. The office smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Frank Morrison looked exactly like you'd expect a private eye to look: rumpled suit, tired eyes, and a face that had seen too much of humanity's dark side. So let me get this straight, Frank said, leaning back in his creaky chair. You want me to investigate your own son? That's right. For what exactly? I spread the medical bills across his desk. I gave him $47,000, my life savings. Now I have cancer and he won't give any of it back. Frank whistled low. That's rough, but not illegal. Maybe not, but something's wrong. The way he acted on the phone, it wasn't normal. Even for a selfish person. What do you want me to find? I don't know. Bank records. Where the money went. If there are other people he's done this to. I paused. I need to understand who my son really island. Frank's fee was $200 a day plus expenses. Money I couldn't afford to spend. Money I had to spend anyway. 3 days later, he called. Mrs. Patterson, we need to meet. Frank's office felt smaller this time. Darker. He had files spread across his desk like a crime scene. Your son's been busy, he said without preamble. What do you mean? Frank opened the first folder. Bank statements. Lots of them. David opened 3 new accounts in the past 6 months, all under different variations of his name. David Patterson, D. Patterson. David P. Patterson. My stomach dropped. Why would he do that? To move money without creating obvious paper trails. Frank pointed to a series of transactions. Your 47,000? It was split up and moved around like a shell game. Where did it go? Cryptocurrency, real estate investment trusts, offshore accounts. Frank looked up at me. This isn't amateur hour, Mrs. Patterson. Your son knows exactly what he's doing. I stared at the numbers swimming across the pages. How long has he been planning this? That's where it gets interesting. Frank opened another folder. I pulled his financial records going back 2 years. He's been slowly liquidating assets, moving money, preparing. Preparing for what? Frank hesitated. I think he's been preparing to disappear. The room spun. What do you mean, disappear? Look at this. Frank showed me property records. He sold his share of the vacation cabin you helped him buy 5 years ago. Cashed out his retirement funds early. Paid off all his credit cards. But he just bought that big house. No, he didn't. Frank's voice was gentle but firm. The house is a rental. High-end rental, but still a rental. He's been living there for 8 months, paying cash. I couldn't process what I was hearing. That's impossible. He showed me the mortgage papers. Forged. Or printed from the internet, I don't know, but that house isn't his. My hands were shaking. Why would he lie about that? Frank opened a third folder, this one thicker than the others. Because he needed you to believe he was struggling. Needed you to feel sorry for him. Needed you to give him money. The folder was full of photos. David at expensive restaurants. David getting into a BMW. David at what looked like a casino. He's been living pretty well for someone who's supposedly struggling with mortgage payments. I don't understand. Why would he need my money if he already had money? Because he's done this before. Frank's words hit me like a physical blow. What? He opened another folder. Inside was a photo of an elderly woman I'd never seen before. Meet Dorothy Chen, 81 years old. Gave her grandson $28,000 last year to help with his medical bills. David doesn't have a grandmother named Dorothy. No, but someone who looked a lot like David does. Someone who charmed his way into her life, called her grandma, brought her flowers on her birthday. I felt sick. You're saying he pretended to be her grandson? I'm saying someone matching your son's description convinced Dorothy Chen to liquidate her savings account. She died 6 months later. Died how? Officially? Heart failure. But her neighbor said she'd been asking a lot of questions about getting her money back, making phone calls, getting upset. The room was spinning faster now. There's more. Frank opened yet another folder. Helen Rodriguez in Phoenix, Barbara Walsh in Denver. 3 other elderly women over the past 2 years. All gave significant amounts of money to helpful young men who disappeared afterward. Are you saying my son is some kind of con artist? I'm saying your son has a pattern, and you're part of it. Frank pulled out a manila envelope, the same kind I'd used to give David my life savings. This is the part that really worried me, he said quietly. Inside the envelope were photocopies of documents, insurance policies, with my name on them. David took out a life insurance policy on you 4 months ago. My blood turned to ice. What? $500,000. He's listed as the beneficiary. But I never signed anything. Frank's expression was grim. Your signature's on the application. He handed me the paper. There it was, clear as day. My signature. Except I'd never seen this document before in my life. He forged my signature? It looks like it. The insurance company probably did minimal verification, since it was his mother and he paid the premiums in full, up front. My mind was racing. Life insurance, forged signatures, other dead women. Frank, what exactly are you telling me? He closed all the folders and looked me straight in the eye. I'm telling you that your son has been planning this for a long time. The house rental, The fake mortgage papers, the multiple bank accounts, the life insurance policy. Planning what? I think he's been planning to get your money and make sure you never ask for it back. The words hung in the air like poison gas. You think he wants me to die? Frank was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Patterson, in 30 years of doing this job, I've learned to trust my gut. And my gut says you're in danger. From my own son? From someone who looks like your son but isn't the person who raised him. I thought about David's voice on the phone. Cold, calculated, like talking to a stranger. Maybe because I was. Frank opened one final folder. This one had my picture in it. A recent photo, like someone had been watching me. Where did you get this? I found it in a database search. Mrs. Patterson, someone filed a missing person inquiry about you 2 weeks ago. What? But I'm not missing. No, you're not. But someone wanted to establish a paper trail suggesting you might be. The pieces clicked together in my mind like a puzzle from hell. The life insurance policy, the missing person report, the other dead women. David wasn't just planning to keep my money. He was planning to make sure I'd never be around to ask for it back. Mrs. Patterson, Frank said quietly, I think your son is planning to make sure you never ask for that money again. I sat in that dingy office, surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal, and realized the most terrifying truth of all. The person I'd raised, loved, and trusted with everything I had wasn't just a thief. He was a killer, and I was next on his list. I sat in my car outside David's house for 20 minutes, the recording device burning a hole in my purse like a loaded gun. Frank had given it to me that morning, along with a stern warning. Don't go alone. This is dangerous. But I couldn't wait for the police to maybe believe me someday. I needed proof. I needed David to admit what he'd done. I needed to look my son in the eye and see if there was anything left of the boy I'd raised. The front door was unlocked. It always was in this perfect neighborhood where nobody expected monsters to live next door. I walked through his marble foyer, my footsteps echoing like gunshots. The house was too quiet, too dark. David, I called out. In here, Mom. His voice came from the living room, calm, like he'd been expecting me. I found him sitting in his leather armchair, the one I'd helped him pick out 3 years ago when he was still pretending to be my loving son. Cash was spread across the coffee table in neat stacks. Hundreds, thousands of dollars. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Busy night? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Just organizing some investments. David's fingers moved through the bills like he was petting a cat. What brings you by, Mom? Feeling better? Feeling better. Like I'd had the flu instead of cancer. Much better, actually. Especially after my meeting with Frank Morrison today. Now he looked up. His eyes were different, colder. Like looking at a reptile wearing my son's face. Frank Morrison? The private investigator I hired to look into your finances. David's hands went still on the money. You hired a private investigator? To spy on me? To find out who you really are. He leaned back in his chair, still calm, still collected. And what did you find out? I reached into my purse and pressed record on the device Frank had given me. I found out about Dorothy Chen, and Helen Rodriguez, and Barbara Walsh. David's expression didn't change, not even a flicker. Those names don't mean anything to me. They should. You killed them. Finally, a reaction. David smiled. Not the warm smile I remembered from his childhood. This was something else entirely. Something that made my blood freeze in my veins. That's a pretty serious accusation, Mom. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. I pulled Frank's folder from my purse and dropped it on his coffee table, scattering some of the cash. Bank records, forged documents, life insurance policies. You've been doing this for years. David picked up one of the photos, Dorothy Chen's smiling face. He studied it like he was trying to remember where he'd left his keys. "Sweet old lady," he said finally. "Terrible what happened to her. You happened to her. Did I?" David set the photo down carefully. "Can you prove that?" "I can prove you took out a life insurance policy on me. I can prove you forged my signature. I can prove you've been moving my money around like you're planning to disappear." "Planning to disappear?" David laughed. "Mom, you watch too much television." "I also know about the missing person report." The laughter stopped. "What missing person report?" "The one someone filed on me 2 weeks ago, setting up a paper trail to make it look like I vanished on my own." David stood up slowly, the cash still in his hands. When he smiled this time, it was the kind of smile that makes your soul freeze. "Then I guess we have a problem, don't we, Mom?" My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. "The only problem here is that you're a monster who kills old ladies for money." "I prefer to think of myself as someone who helps elderly people transition more peacefully from life." Transition more peacefully, like he was some kind of grief counselor instead of a murderer. "You mean you help them die?" "I help them stop suffering." "Do you know how miserable Dorothy Chen was? Living alone, scared, confused. I gave her purpose, made her feel loved. And when it was time for her to go, I made sure it was gentle." My stomach lurched. "You poisoned her!" "I helped her heart give out a little faster than it might have otherwise." Very peaceful, very natural looking. He was confessing. Right here in his living room, with money scattered around like confetti, my son was casually admitting to murder. And the others? Helen had a stroke. Barbara had a fall down the stairs. All very tragic, all very believable, all very profitable. David's smile widened. "Well, I'm not a charity, Mom." I stared at this stranger who looked like my child. "What happened to you? When did you become this?" "Become what? Practical? Efficient? Smart enough to see opportunities where other people see problems?" "Evil. When did you become evil?" "Evil is such a harsh word." David started walking toward me, slow and deliberate. "I prefer entrepreneur." I. "You're a serial killer." "I'm a businessman who specializes in helping lonely elderly people make the most of their final investments." The recording device in my purse felt like my only lifeline. "And now you're planning to help me make my final investment?" "Well, you are getting expensive, Mom. All those medical bills, all that treatment. It's really not very cost-effective when you think about it." "Cost-effective? Cancer's expensive. And painful. And there's no guarantee you'll even survive it." David was close enough now that I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes. The same eyes that used to light up when I came home from work. "But life insurance? That's a sure thing." "You can't be serious." $500,000, Mom. Think about it. You could solve all your problems and mine at the same time. My problems would be solved because I'd be dead. Your problems would be solved because you'd be at peace. No more pain, no more fear, no more wondering if you can afford treatment." I backed toward the door, but David moved to block my path. "Where are you going, Mom? We were having such a nice chat." "I'm leaving, and I'm going straight to the police." "With what evidence? A bunch of bank records that show I'm good with money? Some photos of elderly women who died of natural causes? Insurance policies that prove I care about my mother's future?" He was right. Everything Frank had found was suspicious, but not necessarily criminal. Except for what David had just told me. "They'll believe me when I play them the recording of you confessing to murder." David's smile faltered. "What recording?" I pulled the device from my purse and held it up. This recording. For the first time since I'd walked in, David looked genuinely surprised. Then he lunged for it. I was 72 years old with cancer, but fear gave me speed I didn't know I still had. I dodged his grab and ran for the door. "Mom, wait." I heard him chasing me, his footsteps heavy on the marble floor. I made it to the front door, yanked it open, and ran into the night. Behind me, I heard David's voice calling out like he was a concerned son, worried about his confused mother. "Mom, come back. You're not thinking clearly." But I was thinking clearly, maybe for the first time in months. My son was a killer, and I had proof. I drove straight to the police station with my hands shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. The recording device sat on the passenger seat like a bomb that could destroy what was left of my family. But it was also the only thing that could save my life. Detective Rodriguez listened to the entire recording without saying a word. 27 minutes of my son calmly describing how he'd murdered 3 elderly women and was planning to kill me next. When it ended, she looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much evil in this world. "Mrs. Patterson, we need to move fast." What happened next felt like watching someone else's life unfold in fast forward. Police cars surrounded David's house at 3 a.m. Neighbors came out in their bathrobes, whispering behind their hands as my son was led away in handcuffs. He looked right at me as they put him in the police car. No anger, no shame, just mild disappointment, like I'd ruined his favorite television show. "Why, Mom?" he called out. "We could have worked something out." Worked something out. Like my murder was a business negotiation. The search of his house turned up everything Frank had suspected, and more. Forged documents for dozens of elderly victims across 5 states. Detailed files on their medical conditions, financial situations, and family dynamics. He'd kept souvenirs. Dorothy Chen's reading glasses, Helen Rodriguez's wedding ring, Barbara Walsh's medication bottles. Trophies from women whose only crime was trusting someone who seemed kind. The worst part was his computer. Detective Rodriguez showed me pages and pages of research he'd done on me. My medical records, somehow obtained illegally. My daily routines, tracked and documented. Plans for my accident, a fall down the stairs that would look natural for a woman my age with cancer. He'd been planning this for 8 months, Detective Rodriguez said. Long before you got sick. So the cancer was just convenient timing? The cancer was his opportunity. Made you more vulnerable, more desperate, more likely to give him money and less likely to be believed if you got suspicious. I sat in that police station conference room, surrounded by evidence of my son's evil, and tried to understand how the baby I'd rocked to sleep had become a monster who planned my murder. But some questions don't have answers that make sense. The trial was a media circus. Mother exposes serial killer son made headlines across the country. Reporters camped outside my apartment, asking how it felt to send my own child to prison. It felt like dying and being reborn at the same time. I testified on the 3rd day. Walked into that courtroom wearing the same black dress I'd worn to David's college graduation, back when I thought I'd raised a good man. David sat at the defendant's table in an expensive suit, looking every inch the successful young professional. He'd even hired a good lawyer who tried to paint me as a confused elderly woman with a grudge against her generous son. But the recording spoke for itself. 27 minutes of David describing his murders like he was discussing the weather. The jury listened in stunned silence as my son's voice filled the courtroom, calm and cold and completely without remorse. "I help them stop suffering," his recorded voice said. Very peaceful, very natural looking. The jury deliberated for 43 minutes. Guilty on all counts. 3 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, multiple counts of fraud and elder abuse. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the judge read the sentence, David finally looked at me. For just a second, I saw something that might have been the little boy I'd raised. Confused. Hurt. Like he couldn't understand why his mother had betrayed him. But it was gone so fast I might have imagined it. The money was returned. All of it. My $47,000 plus interest seized from his various accounts. The insurance companies canceled the fraudulent policies. The families of his other victims finally had closure. Dorothy Chen's granddaughter hugged me outside the courthouse. "Thank you," she whispered through tears. "Now we know what really happened to Grandma." I started chemotherapy 2 weeks after the trial ended. The same treatment I'd begged David to help me afford. The same treatment he'd planned to make sure I never needed. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months later, my oncologist used the word that changes everything again. Remission. I was going to live. David had failed. I walked out of that courthouse on the day he was sentenced, and for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defined by being someone's mother. I wasn't Margaret Patterson, devoted mom who sacrificed everything for her ungrateful son. I was just Margaret, a 72-year-old woman who'd survived cancer and a serial killer who happened to share her DNA. A woman who'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love the most. But I'd also learned something else. I was stronger than I ever knew. And sometimes, being a survivor is more important than being a mother.